All right. Welcome back to the All-American Savage Show podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, John Burke. This is a special episode today. I have with me a very special guest. This gentleman, before I introduce him, I'm going to introduce him, and then I want to read what he wrote on Twitter. I want to welcome, I've already talked about him on the podcast, Adam B Coleman. This is a tweet that he fired off that somebody had shared to me. And I thought it was so interesting the way you worded this. So first of all, welcome to the show, Adam. Thank you for coming on. Oh, let me turn you up on the thing real quick. There we go. All right. Again, thank you for coming on the show, Adam. I appreciate you being here. I know you're a very busy man, making time out of your day. And again, you author wrongspeak.net. That's your website, correct?
Correct.
And then what is it that you cover on that?
Basically anything culturally, politically, whether we're talking about, hard-nosed politics or cultural commentary, race, gender, but I think the difference is that I advocate for people to write. So even people who are amateurs, most of the articles are written by myself, but I do have a lot of contributors who want to express themselves. So it's more of a platform for free speech, but with an intellectual edge to it. I
like that. The tweet that I'm referring to, for those that are not aware, and this is what you wrote, Adam, and you said, and this is tweeted out on 11/23/21. He says, "I grow tired of people using black people like a political football, throwing us from one cause to another to manufacture outrage for policy change and appear virtuous. You people are our villains, pretending to be our saviors. Since the verdict of Kyle Rittenhouse, there has been an abundance of people, especially white leftists, who feel the need to invoke black people because they don't like the way things turned out. If you are this person, fuck you." I like the fact that you dropped the F-bomb. I'm a cusser myself, so I appreciate that. You continue and say, "I normally don't speak this harshly, but you people always grab microphones to speak for black people as if you are our saviors. You believe you're these virtuous heavenly soldiers here to save us weak black people when you're the exact devil we don't need. You are our villains. Let me say this again. You are our fucking villains. You are the type of people who record themselves giving homeless people $20 so you can try and trick people into believing you're a good person. God knows what you really are. He can't be swindled. Every time you people stand up for black people, you're not helping. You constantly interfere by manufacturing narratives that are unproductive for many black people, and you constantly group us together like we are monolithic beings. The fact that you think you need to carry a sign and wear t-shirts letting us know that you think our lives matter is the problem. You're not convincing anyone else but yourselves. You people are selfish, manipulative, elitists, and every time you attempt to use black people as a manipulative tool to get something you want politically, I'll be sure to call you out." And you finish it off by saying, "We do not need saving. You do. We do not need your help, but you sure as hell need some help. Quit transferring your insecurities onto a group of people and quit using black people as your political motives and your Twitter clapbacks because it only displays your low character." Bro, that's a mouthful. That is a lot of respect. So let me first start off with, how did you come to this conclusion? How did you come to feeling this way?
Actually, I've been feeling this way for a while. For people who are not familiar with me, I wrote a book. I released it earlier this year in March. And one of the chapters I'm talking about the savior and victim relationship, right? How they're codependent on each other. And I give.
Is this the book called Black Victim to Black Victor? Okay.
Correct.
Where can they find this book at?
They can purchase it directly off my website, wrongspeak.net, or they can go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
But I dedicated a chapter talking about this savior-victim relationship and even giving personal stories of people that I encountered who believed that they needed to save me or save black people. And, so it's something that, especially the title of the book, Black Victim, I'm talking about victim ideology, the victim mindset, but the savior complex is closely associated with it because they're not mutually exclusive. They need each other, right? The victim makes the savior feel good. The savior makes the victim feel wanted. So it's something that I've been very keen to. It was just extremely annoying from the perspective of Kyle Rittenhouse situation from a completely racial standpoint had nothing to do with black people. Yet somehow they wanted to push black people into being, well, if he was black, but he wasn't. This has
Right.
nothing to do with black people. This entire situation has nothing to do with it. And the fact that their reaction is to invoke a victim within that particular scenario to come off as being virtuous and see, black people, I recognize the inequalities and unfairness. If he was,
Right.
even though he wasn't, but if he was, let's just constantly conjure up black people as these people who need saving, who are unable to get a fair trial, who are unable to have any sort of success within society. And it's that particular mindset that I truly hate. And even though, like in the tweet, I think a lot of people honed in on the white leftists. I said it like especially white leftists, but not excluding them,
Right.
because black leftists do this same nonsense too.
Also Republicans do it as well.
Yeah.
When Turning Point first made it big with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, they latched on to Kanye. And then I started noticing a trend of conservatives trying to use minorities as political pawns, almost as if it was like some type of political draft, to where it's like if we had a black Democrat come over to conservatism or to the Republican side, it was like, oh, look, we got one. Like we got one,
Yeah.
we raised it up. And then you saw these movements emerging like Latino Leadership Summit, Jewish lead. And it all, in my mind, all this was doing is creating more diversity. Instead of coming under one banner, why is it that we feel the need to say, well, being that you're of a minority group or you're of this secular group or whatever the case may be, instead of just trying to say we should come together, we're instead trying to enable more divisiveness under the umbrella, under the optic of saying we are together, but yet we're different. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So the one thing I've seen in the past is exactly what you're talking about, that both sides do it. But how do you, as a black man, feel like when, say, for example, Joe Biden would say something along the lines of, if you don't vote for me, you're not really black? Or the idea that black people are too stupid to use the internet or too poor to secure a voter ID card. Like, when you hear these things, and I will say primarily from white leftists that want to do this whole virtue signaling of like, well, black people, they're so poor. It's like, where are you coming? Like, how does that make you feel when someone like kind of, dictates like they're your voice?
It makes me feel sorry for them.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
The fact that they think so lowly of other people and so falsely highly of themselves. Because it's fake virtue, right? It's virtue signaling, but it's not actually being virtuous. What exactly are you doing to help somebody? You're not doing anything. Most of these people who even claim to be activists are online activists.
Yeah.
And
Slacktivists.
at most, yeah. And at most, what do you do? Go march in the street and saying, Black Lives Matter? And then what?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't take any of these people seriously. And from an emotional standpoint, it's annoying at most, but it doesn't affect me because I'm secure with myself. And I know that these people are full of shit. And I know it's less to do with me and more to do with themselves. It's kind of part of the problem, but so I don't take a high offense to it. I use it as a point to say, these are the type of people that we're elevating as our saviors. And you guys should be mindful that these people are just complete narcissists. And maybe some of them are racist.
I think inwardly they are, a lot of them. And I think it's a matter of projecting themselves to where they make themselves feel like they're not. But saying, like, it's the same as like, oh, I'm not racist, I have black friends. Like, no, you can still be a racist and have black friends. Like, that's entirely possible. So
it's possible.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Robin DiAngelo, who will go and say, all white people are racist. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to remember her phrase. It's not a matter of if there's racism between an encounter, but when, right? So these are all things. And then she'll also go and say, white progressives are the worst. Like, she's completely talking about herself.
Right.
Right. So it's complete projection when she's talking about race.
Where do you think this all stemmed from? Like this whole white savior complex, where do you think this stemmed from? What was the causation of this?
I don't really know. I don't really have a good answer for that. I think I think there are trends that happen in society.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the growth of identity politics becoming the norm, which,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, just so people understand, I'm a former liberal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the things that pushed me away from the left was their complete embrace of identity politics.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm worried about on the right is the reflexiveness to use identity politics to shove it to the left.
Thank you. Thank you. That's dude. Oh my God. So for people that are listening, you can be my witness. I didn't even ask you your political affiliation. I kind of had a generalized idea based upon your statement, or you're just a very intelligent liberal that sees shit like that. It's like, even if you were a Democrat, it's like, that's still props for saying something like very insightful. But you're 100% right. And you know, I caught so much flack warning conservatives like what you are participating in a sense of trying to recruit your own minorities and use it as if it's some kind of political club to combat the left. It's like you're essentially participating in the exact same thing and only furthering divide, but on your own side. And it kind of aggravated me because it felt like conservatives were going in the right direction at first, and then we just went way wrong. It's like, instead of just trying, like I said before, keep us separate, bring everybody together. And say this should not be about sexuality, skin color. It should be about the fact that what does conservatism represent to people en masse, or as a whole for the most part. But instead, I feel like you're 100% right. It's turned into identity politics nonstop.
Yeah. You know, in one of the speeches I gave, the last thing I stated was, you know, I'm in front of a room filled with Republicans, and I told them, listen, you know, don't be like them.
Yeah.
You know, see me as a man who happens to be black, not a black man.
Yeah.
There's a clear difference between the two. And, you know, if someone likes what I'm saying, I hope you like what I'm saying, regardless of what I look like.
Right.
Either I'm speaking truth or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a small element within the right that is either reflexive to the left, because the left has masterfully labeled Republicans or people who are conservative or whatever you want to call it. They've masterfully labeled everybody who's on that political spectrum as being racist. Mm-hmm. So any moment that they can try and say, "Hey guys, I'm not racist. Look what's going on.
Look how many black people I speak for. Look how many black people I've saved." Yeah.
Right. And to me, I think politics on either side should be absent of each other, right? And what ends up happening is, granted, the media is left-leaning, right? So we don't have the media. We shouldn't envy having the media. We shouldn't cower. That's part of my issue with Republican politicians, is because they know they're not going to get a fair shot by going on CNN, but they'll sit there and cower and try and grovel to the accusations that are levied at them. Fuck them. Yeah. Right? The right needs to embrace their beliefs, their policies, wholesale, absent of what the left says. Because once you react to it, it's kind of like on Twitter, right? You're someone who has 100,000 followers, right? And then somebody with 5 followers and no face comes and says something, and you reply to it. You've now given them. You gave it life. Yeah, exactly. So it's the same type of thing when it comes to the left and the right dichotomy. The left says the Republicans are racist. We say, no, we're not. And we try everything possible to illuminate that we're not this, right? Look at this. And we shouldn't be doing that, because all we're doing is playing into the same game that they are, 100%. While we're complaining that they're playing this game. Yeah. So, you know, while I see the complete savior complex being highly promoted on the left, it is in small waves being participated on the right.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because, dude, I'm telling you. So I was a diehard Republican. I was a diehard Trump supporter. And then I got exposed to libertarianism and then constitutionalism. And I pulled away from Republicans because I felt like, from my own personal belief, I believe in God, I believe in Christ, but I do believe in a separation of church and state in the sense of protecting all religions, and that's what America should represent. But I started noticing that Republicans were mirroring, and I was guilty of this myself until I actually had to have a come to Jesus meeting and be like, wait a minute, like, you're doing the exact same thing they're doing. This isn't right. And I just see it continuously used over and over and over again, to the point where it's like, when you baby someone enough, they're going to turn into a grown baby. When you baby minorities to the point where you are speaking on their behalf, you're offering them all these incentivization. That's what I see Democrats doing. That's what I saw the Obama administration doing as far as the change, all this stuff that was promised. It's essentially keeping them poor, keeping them on government subsidy programs, and keep them voting Democrat, and then threatening that if Republicans are elected, you're going to lose the incentives that you have. Which ultimately, and I feel for a lot of minorities out there, you can sit there and scream this till you're blue in the face and say, you do realize the handouts that you were being given, or the government subsidy programs that you are currently on, are keeping you poor. They are keeping you enslaved, or by proxy, employees of the government. And it's like you want to wake them up to that. And instantly Democrats are just trying to say and counter, say, well, you're just telling them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, in a sense, yes and no. But at the same token, it's like the direction you're going, you're not going to pull out of this. Like, you are always going to remain in the lower economic class. You will never elevate. And people don't seem to understand that.
So here's one thing I will tell you. This happened for me and just about every person that I've ever come across who is a Democrat, who is black. The issue of convincing them has little to do with economics, little to do with foreign policy, immigration, whatever. As soon as they believe that someone who is on the right and their character is tainted by being a racist, they don't care what you have to offer. Right. So I can literally have a conversation with someone that says, oh, I don't trust the Democrats. I don't this and that. But the Republicans are racist. Right. As soon as that comes into play, conversation ends. Yeah. And so that is the major hurdle between the two. I've had conversations about why that's the case. Why isn't the messaging that I believe exists within the right of good, hardworking people, well-intentioned people, people who are more individualists, why they've been tainted, and how come their message isn't breaking through besides the mainstream media? And a lot of it has to do with the lack of empathy, or at least the lack of an empathetic message. And I wrote an article talking about basically there are so many policies that the right wants, but they've allowed, what I call like conserve nerds, say, oh, look at these numbers economically, blah, 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 blah. And no one cares because they fail to understand that on the left, they are very motivated by emotion. Oh, yeah. Right. On the left, they use anecdotal, emotional statements, things of that nature to motivate people. Right. They were able to motivate non-voting people against Trump by using rhetoric that was saying you must do something because he's going to do X, Y, and Z. It was a very personal message to get people to go out and vote for Trump in both elections. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, against Trump. So when it comes to an empathetic message, I'll use the example of the southern border. The southern border could be an easy win for us if we stop talking about how illegal immigration hurts economics, illegal immigration, floods in people. How are you going to manage this? They talk about it from a very non-personal, non-human element. If they were to say the crisis at the border is a crisis of human trafficking and child sex trafficking, and they were to hone in on that, that would be a winning message, right? But
they have, I mean, to some extent. I mean, I've seen, well, maybe this is just me, but I've seen a lot of, like, say, for example, a lot of people don't know. Actually, a lot of people do know now. As far as like women that are brought across the border, trafficked across the border, 74% are victims of rape or sexual assault of some form, and it's hard for me to say because I see it from my side. I don't know what the left sees it from, but I think you're right on that one. But also at the same token, I think like. It's like the MSM, I think, at the root of all this is the biggest contributing problem. I feel like both sides showcase such a just deeply rooted bias that we could literally say the sky is blue and CNN will say, no, it's purple. And people will acknowledge this simply because of a political or a negative or positive association bias. And at that point, the good faith argument breaks down and there's no communication that can be had. And it feels like with social media, it almost appears as if like these conversations are dying off because of the extremists on social media are getting the spotlight, and the actual conversations that should be happening are not being given any press at all. Nobody wants to watch it. It almost feels like our politically elected officials are the new Kardashians, and people are feeding into the drama, and there's nothing productive really coming from any of this anymore.
Yeah, actually, I was watching you earlier talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene going back and forth like it's a reality show.
I just talked about this in today's podcast. I think she's batshit crazy. I think she's the AOC of the right, but I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, I don't like the way any politician does that. I barely like that they have a Twitter in general, because what ends up happening is they end up like trying to boast themselves, right? It's a platform for them to talk up about themselves, or talk negatively about somebody else.
Yeah.
When the reality, do something.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's been, and just so people understand, I'm an independent, so I'm not even a Republican. But I would be a Republican.
I think Republicans just heard that. It's like, wait, he's black, he's independent. Oh, we can recruit him. We got.
I would be a Republican if I saw that, especially on a federal level, the Republicans had a microcosm of an idea of what they're doing. I feel like they are reactionaries.
Yeah.
I feel like they're essentially right now one side of the same coin when it comes to the establishment. And all they do is play the bad guy. As soon as Donald Trump left office, was it Lindsey Graham couldn't wait to congratulate Kamala Harris. Couldn't wait. Let's bring back the status quo, right? So these are the people that they're supposed to be our so-called leaders. And to me, it almost doesn't matter because many of them are corrupt. I don't trust them. And we're supposed to choose a side. Yeah. So that's why I choose independence. Right now, I almost wholesale do not trust any Democrat.
Yeah.
There are very few that I feel that are principled.
Have you been watching Tulsi Gabbard?
I was literally thinking.
I don't know what's up. I love her. I think, except for her anti-2A stances in some cases, I don't know where she's been. Like, why was she running? Why is she a Democrat? Because the things that she's been saying as of late, especially on her Instagram, you would think she's centrist right, but certainly not left.
Well, I think from what I remember, her policy positions are a bit progressive, right? So they're not ridiculous like the Green New Deal kind of progressive, but they are a bit on the left-leaning side. So I understand from that perspective. But I think that's also to show that there's been a shift when it comes to the Democrat Party. I'm a former liberal. I know so many former liberals who are now present day conservatives, and they kind of feel that they were pushed out or they were awoken to what was actually going on within the Democrat Party.
That was going to be my next question, as far as what pushed you away from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting because it wasn't just like one thing. It was a multitude of things. During the last Democrat primary, I was kind of like in a limbo stage where I was just listening. I realized that the media was full of it, basically. And so I was willing to listen to a whole bunch of different things. I actually went left, right? I was like, well, let me listen to progressives. Let me hear these things out. And I started watching progressive independent media, hearing their views, hearing their ideas. I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand where they're coming from. And one of the people was Jimmy Dore. I started watching Jimmy Dore, and I loved how he was principled. I didn't necessarily agree with everything that he was saying, but I loved how he was so principled in his viewpoint that he would talk about corruption from the Democrats, even though he's on the left. And I think from him, it made me hate the Democrats even more than I actually already did.
How long ago did you change? Did you switch?
Completely. I want to say it was during that cycle. Actually, that's what I was going to get to. At the time, I was like, you know what? Maybe Bernie is the not establishment guy that could come through, right? And so I was kind of saying, well, let's see what can happen with Bernie. And I saw how the media treated Bernie. I saw how he would go on, let's say, The View, and they would completely treat him differently than anybody else that would show up there. How they would insert narratives when it came to him, or his supporters, things like that. And at that point, I was like, they're railroading him, they're cheating him. And when Biden went to, it was a time period when Biden wasn't winning anything, right? And then he finally won one state, and then everybody dropped out except for, I think it was 2 people. They stayed in long enough so Bernie could not get the delegates. And then they left. It was a complete fucking setup. And that's the point. I was like, you know what? I am absolutely done with the Democrats, because these people are shisty as all hell. And if
so
I
you
was
recently switched over.
yeah, relatively,
okay.
relatively so. And when I think about it, I was like, would the Republicans do the same thing? And they could have done that with Donald Trump, but they didn't. Maybe they wanted to like make an example out of him, and they thought they would make a point, and it backfired. I don't know. But, it just really made me question a lot of different things. And so I just started taking in all different types of media and information to decipher for myself. The easy thing would have been just to be like, Republicans great, and just switch sides. But I started really examining certain things and just saying, well, it's not roses on this side either. Let me stay somewhere in the middle. So politically, I'm somewhere center right when it comes to policies.
Yeah. I think more and more people are waking up to that too. And I think if Republicans, I should say, really want to pose a threat to Democrats come 2022 and 2024, and people are going to take this really the wrong way, but I really don't care. It's the evangelicals within the GOP that I think are ruining it for the most part. And it's not in a sense of they're ruining it because of their religion. It's a fact that they want their religion to be the guiding factor of the party, when instead it should be liberty focused, to where your religion shouldn't matter. It's just that your religion should be protected. And that's where I feel like a lot of evangelicals are not going to vote for more progressive conservatives to come out. Because say, for example, like the Conservative Party is certainly not the Conservative Party of, say, back during the Obama administration, or even prior to that, or like the Bush administration. Now we have a group of people like myself, for example, to where at first, when it first hit the scene as far as don't ask, don't tell being repealed from the military, I was against it. And then we started to kind of evolve, educate ourselves, understand some fundamental differences that we have, but ultimately come to the conclusion of it's your right and freedom to love whomever it is that you want to love. I don't personally agree with it from a theological standpoint, but I'm also not going to try and railroad you from being able to do that, because again, it would be me cherry picking your individual freedom. And that was kind of like my wake up moment to say, okay, maybe this is not the way I want to go as far as Republicans go. But I think Republicans now, I think by and large, then I'm speculating here, are embracing not necessarily of gay marriage, but of the right to do what you want to do, because it is your life. That's what America is based upon. But again, run on a ticket like that these days and take even a step further and go more libertarian. I think a lot of evangelicals will not support that, because again, they don't have enough foresight to see I'm actually on your side. But I don't think they see that. They just see it as like, oh, you don't want to legislate morality. Oh, you're a horrible human being. It's like, that's exactly the opposite of what I want. I don't think there should be any legislating of morality or religion. I think it should be free to do as you see fit. But yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And that's where like part of me is a bit libertarian too, where I'm saying, basically the same thing that you said. I'm not in full agreement of it, although if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, right? So you have the right to do it, so be it. Yeah. And it's not something I'm willing to die over. Now, one of the things that I do not like how the LGBT movement has gone from, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I remember for years, it was all about gay marriage, right? Gay marriage goes through. Then they completely moved the goalposts and then became all encompassing of all these different gender ideologies and all this other stuff. Yeah. And it became so abrasive of you are going to accept me, right? From an activist level, not from a... And
not just accept, but also celebrate. And if you don't celebrate, you must be a bigot, or it's... And yeah, I've noticed it as well, to the point where... Yeah, continue, I'm sorry. But yeah, I 100% know where you're going with that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Celebrating is completely different than saying, I'm fine with what you're doing,
Right.
right? If this is what you want to do, fine.
Right.
But I'm not going to wear the pin, like the Seinfeld episode. I'm not, you
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to do all that stuff. I'm not going to wave the flag. I'm not going to do all these things. I'm not going to advocate for something that I don't really even care about. Forget not wanting it. I just don't even care. I wrote an article talking about how there's this level of entitlement that you're supposed to care about other people's causes.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. Thank you. Dude, I get the same thing in the veteran community about we should get more people involved in caring about veteran suicide. It's like, that's a very selfish approach to take. It's like, you signed the dotted line to do the sacrifice, and you can't expect these people that have never been impacted by something like this to give a shit. And you can't force them to give a shit, because instead you get the exact opposite. They're going to hate you for it. Like, it's like,
Right.
and people don't like having those surreal conversations, because like, well, if that's the case, if people should care about your problems, let's explore that. How much do you care about childhood research into cancer or lupus or Crohn's or this? Well, it's like, yeah, you don't care, but it doesn't make you a bad human being. It just doesn't directly impact you, because if it didn't, bro, you'd be driving yourself crazy having to care about all these various causes. Like, so where does it stop? And people don't realize that. And you're dead on the money with that. It's just like, yeah, get them involved and say, you have to care about. No, I don't. That's why it's your cause. And you recruit people voluntarily based to say, come join my cause.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed this with in the article. I talk about someone that I was having conversations with who was Jewish, who didn't like what Dave Chappelle had said in his last stand-up. And he's like, check out this video. Look at this. This is what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah. He's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, my position stays the same. If you don't like it, don't listen to it.
Yeah.
I'd say that to anybody else. And he did not like that I was equally outraged as him. So then he blocked me, which actually did me a favor, because it really showed me who you are.
Yeah.
If me not advocating for whatever cause or feeling emotionally invested in something that you're supposed to be emotionally invested or you want to be emotionally invested in, it's utterly selfish for people to take that position.
Yep.
Just like how Black Lives Matter wants everybody to feel the anguish or feel the pain of everybody. It's like, you people are bullies at this point. You're emotional bullies.
Yeah.
And I think people have to be willing to say, I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't sound nice to say, but it's true. I just don't care. I don't care enough to do anything about it. There are bad things that happen everywhere in the world, right? I can't care about every cause.
Yeah.
There are kids who are, there's a conflict in with Palestine and Israel, right? Yeah. I will never say anything about it. You know why? Because that has zero to do with me. It's way too complicated to get into. People, no, it's very simple. No, it's not. It's not simple whatsoever. Yeah. I just don't care enough, right? And even if I did care, I have zero impact on it. So why am I getting emotionally invested in it?
Well, I got to disagree with you on that one, man, because you're developing a following. Like, you've got, like, you have your website. What you say is listed. I mean, fuck, what you said got you on this show. I mean, I think, don't sell yourself short here. You definitely have more impact than you realize, especially with social media this day and age, to where you can present an ideology or a perspective that can turn into, I mean, you just don't know how many people you can impact with that and open their eyes to seeing things differently. I mean, so there is always that aspect, but I get where you're coming from, because, like, for me,
I'm saying in between
I get
a war.
Exactly. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, some people are like, how do you feel about the war in Afghanistan? It's like, well, I mean, I'm not serving, so what the fuck do I care? It's like, yeah, but you are paying taxes. That I get what you're saying, but at the same token, though, it's just like, I feel like with the BLM, I've had a few conversations with BLM members. It was actually very interesting. We had a lot of commonality, a lot of common ground, but I think the singular thing that kept us separated and so divided was the press. And then I also see now how the BLM has turned more Marxist. It's been very opportunistic. They've made a lot of money. And then many BLM members of chapters around the country are coming out saying they haven't helped us at all. Like, we're literally just doing this on our own. The main HQ or corporate BLM are not doing it. Money's not going where it's supposed to go. Like, when you have a leader of a movement buying a $1.4 million house and then puts up a gate around it, and then tweets out about how we're all having Thanksgiving on stolen land. It's like, what are you talking about? Like you're literally having Thanksgiving dinner too. And then you got like leaders like Colin Kaepernick, who I wish the press would cover more of, because this guy is saying so many ignorant things that you do a documentary on Netflix about how the NFL draft is like a slavery market, yet you're still trying out. Like, I'm sorry, I don't remember one case in the history of slavery after slavery was abolished was like, a guy comes like, you know what? I don't mind working for free and getting my ass kicked. But yeah, bring back the whip. You know what? I have a kink. I'm kind of into it. Let's do it. Nobody does that. So it's like when Colin Kaepernick is saying this, like, what are you talking about? And to me, it stems from a thing of, quite honestly, a lot of people don't want to have this conversation. Black privilege. By virtue of your race, you have a much louder voice, a higher percentile of being hired on at a business. There's been multiple. My partner Josh does the podcast with me. He talked about there have been multiple instances where people are faking their ethnicity to identify as a minority to have a better opportunity or a higher percentage rate of getting into it. It's like, so tell me how that is not black privilege or minority privilege, or we could just call it what it is at its core root, which is just basic fucking racism.
So it's funny that you bring up Colin Kaepernick and talk about black privilege. I wrote an article basically saying the thing that nobody is really saying. No one is willing to say. I've seen a few people talk about it, and it really made me think about it, and that's where I decided to write about it. But basically, Colin Kaepernick doesn't know who his father is. Mm-hmm. Nobody does, except maybe his mother, right? But there's no real information coming out about who he is. It's all assumed that he is black. We have zero idea, yet he is wholesale taken on the identity of the oppressed American black male. Yeah. If you look at him, he has very little typical features when it comes to being black, besides that he's able to grow out an afro, which a lot of different ethnicities are able to grow out an afro if you try. If you look at him, it was a funny thing I did. I put him side by side with Screech from Saved by the Bell, and he looks like a dead end. He looks just like him. Oh my right? God. Right. The truth is, it's quite possible that he's a race imposter. He's the Rachel Dolezal of the NFL. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. Just put him, think of all the different black people that you've ever talked to, met. Does he look anything like them? I know mixed people. My son is mixed, right? You can see how my son has certain features.
Wait, so you're a race trader? Wow.
Right. Well, that's
what I'm sure they're gonna call you. Like, what? You have a white kid? You have a mixed child? Jesus Christ, you're a race trader.
But it's true. Why would we automatically assume that his father is American black? Right? Because let's say his father's Nigerian. Well, Nigerians don't have the same history as American black Americans do. Why is he taking on this? We've been these oppressed people for hundreds of years.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
You talked about it. There is advantages of being black, and people don't want to say it because we're supposed to be labeled as these victims of society. Yes. But there is a clear advantage that this guy can go on and have a Netflix series where he labels the NFL as being a slave market, and they give him money for it. Making millions of dollars.
Sign me up for that slavery. Fuck me. I get to play a game. You mean they're going to take care of me? I get to go to training camp. I get access to the best gyms, personal trainers, chiropractors, the whole and I get paid millions. Fuck, sign me up for that slave trade. I'm sure there's a lot of other white Americans, much less black Americans, living in ghetto parts of Dallas, St. Louis. It was like, I'll fucking, like, bro, how privileged are you to say something so ignorant?
Right, exactly. And it's all done with this assumption that he is of an American black descendant. And we don't know that. We really don't know.
Do you think that's going to matter, though? Because if we really look at the core of the issue, though, most black Americans, they want to claim African-American descent, have never even been to Africa. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but if you go over to Africa, you speak to, black people from Africa, they do not like black Americans because they say, and they sit there, they've told me many times, especially my DMs on Instagram, it's very interesting the conversations I have on there, and talk about it's like black Americans try and ride our coattails on oppression of the past and what we're currently going through, yet we view them as being insanely privileged and well off. Like, you are living a damn good life, much better than us. So stop using us as your your poster boy of oppression. It's like you and I are nothing alike. And black people don't want to have that conversation to where it's like, no, you're not African American. You're American. You're a black American. Like, why is it that I can say that I'm a white American, but I don't say that I'm like Anglo-Saxon? It's just like you're a white guy in America. You're a black guy in America.
Right.
Like, we're American. Like, I don't understand that. Like, if you want to say that you have ancestry from Africa, but you were born in America, you are a black American. You're not African.
Well, so to answer your first question, why it does matter, because Colin Kaepernick isn't placing himself as being just a black guy and just I'm being oppressed because I'm black. Literally throughout that series, he's taking on the black American oppression story. Right. So he's setting himself up as being a descendant of black oppressed people, descendant of slavery, Jim Crow, and all this other stuff. Right. Yeah. So it matters if his father is of black American descent or is from Algeria. Who knows? Who knows where his father is from? So I think that part is very questionable. If you really look at him, you look at his features. I mean, I'm just saying, whenever you get a chance, put him side by side with Screech, right? He looks just like him. Put him side by side with someone who's from North Africa, someone who is Middle Eastern looking. He has a lot of the same features. It is this hard assumption that he's someone of a same historical background as myself.
I just don't think it's going to matter because you've got Sean King, you got Talcum X, the dude is white. I mean, I'm serious. Like, he's fucking white. Yeah. He's like as white as I am, but he intentionally keeps his head closely shaven. He tries to showcase as if he has features of a mix. It's like, dude, you're white, but people love him, and it doesn't matter.
Well, I think it's funny because recently I talked about him, and it was a complete joke. So I think that tide has turned when it comes to Sean King, and people are realizing, hey, maybe this guy, even from a character standpoint, that maybe this guy isn't legit.
He's a grifter.
Absolutely. So that might change, but I think that it matters just from the sense of how much he is lying.
Yeah.
Right. And how much he is assuming. And I think it matters to point out that he doesn't know, yet he automatically takes that assumption because there is something to be gained by claiming to be a black American. And it's that there are privileges to being certain things. There's a privilege to being a woman at times. There's a privilege to being a man at times. There's all different types of privileges at different times. And we know that there's black privilege. It's just that certain people want to pretend that it does not exist.
Try getting a black Democrat or even a white Democrat to acknowledge that. To say, well, okay, so if by virtue of being white and it grants me certain favors from a white employer versus a black, that's white privilege. So then let's flip the script. What if I go into, because this is the other thing. Like when I was like 19 or 20 years old, I was fresh out of my first tour in the Army, and I went and applied to a federal prison to be a guard there, which is really good money where I was growing up at in Beaumont, Texas. And I was, I think, like 21 years old, and I had 3 years of military experience. And I went up against an obese black woman who, again, if you're a prison guard, being obese is horrible. I mean, you've got to deal with convicts that you're going to have to fight and stuff like that. And she got the job. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. But I was also so young. I was like, I got to work on my shit. But it does exist. But what people don't want to acknowledge, though, is at the core root of this, it's not white privilege or black privilege. It's just racism. Like if somebody hires me and I'm going up against a black guy and the employer is white and he hires me by virtue of my skin color, well, you're basically trying to say, this is what this movement has created. They're trying to push this on me and saying, it's your fault because you're white versus saying that employer was racist. So it's kind of like a dual effect here saying, well, instead of addressing the fact that this was racism based upon skin color and then trying to blast me as a result of it, I think that's where they undermined their own narrative and their own movement to where it's like, look, like it's not my fault. It's like, that guy's clearly a racist. So why aren't you going after him? Why are you trying to make me feel guilty of this? If that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think a lot of it is fueled by this desire to have some sort of equity, whatever that looks like for whichever employer. The fact of the matter is there are not enough black people to fill in the spots of every single field that people the numbers just don't add up. And on top of that, people don't really understand that. I believe the number is like 62, somewhere between 62 and 65% of black people live in 10 states.
I
right?
didn't know that.
So we're in very particular areas, and mostly like in urban city centers. So yeah, if you work in Salt Lake City, complaining that there's not enough black people working at your company,
That's a matter of statistics.
it's a matter of statistics. Like,
Yeah.
it's not your company being racist.
Yeah.
There's not enough black people that live there. So there is this, this is part of the problem where people say, just because of this, there's a disparity, that must mean that there's some sort of oppression or something. It's completely
What is the saying? Causation
fact.
doesn't equate to, I forget the ending of that. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And it's like, but I think people instead want to look at that. And a lot of these SJWs on the left essentially are wanting to be a part of a revolution that has already happened. They're holding on to the tattered remnants of a movement that is dead and gone because it served its purpose. It did what it was intended to do, but they still want to feel like they want to be included in something, to participate, to fight for good. I mean, and this is where I think me and my partner kind of disagree on a few things, where I think that there's a lot of Democrats out there that are well-intentioned. They genuinely believe in their cause. They genuinely believe in what they fight for is just and right. They just don't seem to understand they're being manipulated by it. So I understand where they're coming from. Like, I think at heart, a lot of them are being true to themselves. It's just they're very misled. Does that mean?
I agree with you. I think there are far more well-intentioned people, right, than there are the saviors, like we were talking about. It's just that the saviors get far more attention because they're more radical. I think that we have way more in common, regardless of the political spectrum. I think people just differ on the method of getting there. And this is where like the conversation part comes into play. You know, being able to have conversations, not debates, with people on the basis of good faith. That's when you're able to realize.
That's hard.
Right.
Try going into an argument with good. Oh my! For those that don't know, it's look it up. Good faith argument versus bad faith. To even have the foundation, because a lot of people can fake that. They can fake a good faith argument. Saying, no, I genuinely believe this. It's like, no, you don't. I was like, there's no way you actually believe. You're clinging to that because it gives your argument some sort of fake foundation that doesn't really exist. So a lot of these good faith arguments are actually instead made in bad faith. They just pretend that it's, and I can't stand that. I can't stand that when people do that.
Yeah. I think once you realize that it's going in the wrong direction, you have to abort. But that's where, I have articles talking about effective communication for political conversation. And that could be good for any conversation. So establishing good faith, just to me, basically just means stating, you understand where my heart is, right? Saying stuff like that. If let's say you're talking to a friend, I'm a good person, right? Right. You're establishing good faith, right? You're reminding them of your character. So even if they disagree, even if they're like, I don't fully understand how you came to that conclusion, right? But you're still having a conversation. But as soon as they throw out a name or say like, well, that sounds racist or stuff like that, that's when it teeters over into bad faith. That's when you abort because there's no point of going further unless you want a further headache or argue or fight. So
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I was doing a lot of Twitch debates. I stream the podcast on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, uploaded to SoundCloud, all that. So I go across all platforms. But for a while there, I was doing a lot of debates on Twitch with people from the opposing side of the political spectrum, which I found to be very interesting. It was good to have those conversations. But over time, I started noticing it was the, I want to say clout chasers. I want to say those that were genuinely trying to be more radicalized for the sense of developing a larger following. And then we couldn't actually have very well thought out discussions, much less debates. There were a few, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of them that really left a good impression on me. It's like, I loved having a discussion with them. We don't agree. We don't see eye to eye. But it was a good faith argument to where I have no doubt. Like, I remember Empress, she's transgender. Didn't agree with her on a lot of things, but it's like, but yeah, I actually like her. She's a good person. She actually she presented a very well-rounded argument, which I didn't agree with. But the fact is, it wouldn't resort to ad hom. It wouldn't resort to trying to do character assassination. But to find somebody like that, like, geez, it's like a diamond in the rough. So,
yeah, especially when you're talking about like on the internet. I've seen that for sure. I've seen it a bunch of times. I'm a content freak, so I'm watching all different types of content. And I see like where they're like, well, let's have a debate about it, right? And the right thing's like, oh, we're just gonna have some sort of like point for point conversation, and immediately they say, well, because you're an idiot, and then and then it just goes left.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, I think 90% of debates are a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
Right, because people just hold tight onto their position.
Yeah.
There is no explaining of their position, or they use straw man arguments or ad hominems, and you name it. And like you said, there are definitely for sure people who are looking for more of a following to get their followers up on Twitter, right? Despite if they're hate follows, they want to get their numbers up, right? Because they want the attention, they want the adulation. So there are definitely people like that who say all types of crazy stuff, and they're not there.
I mean, you nailed it, man. You nailed it. I feel like those people that are wanting that attention, I think a lot of them are saying shit they actually don't even mean, quite honestly. But what happens is the spotlight immediately shifts over to them, and everything that was actually being discussed that was like leading towards good outcomes has been completely eliminated, and now we focus instead on this. Case in point, the dude who, the piece of shit that killed like 6 people in the parade. Instantly, the press will not acknowledge that this was a black supremacist. They won't. Instead, it was a car crash. So instead of addressing the fact of why did this happen? Where's this guy coming from? What led him? Instead, it's more focused on now the media is intentionally misrepresenting for the sake of not wanting to. And that's what the media, or that's what the magnifying glass shifts to. And that's why I feel like social media and the press are really at the root of this. Like any revolution that has happened, the first ones to go were the propagandists. They go after the press. They silence their voices immediately. And it's like, I can honestly see why now. I see why. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening right now. The narrative is completely being shifted on a consistent basis. Yeah. There is a level of power and what's the word I'm looking for? Cohesion between big tech and big media, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you go on YouTube, the authoritative sources, Oh
yeah. I got banned on my YouTube channel. I got my second strike. I got like almost 300,000 followers on YouTube. I was literally quoting Fauci and the CDC over COVID, and they banned me for medical misinformation. It's like, I am literally quoting what your God King said. Like, what are you banning me for? But you're right. Big tech, media, and now the government, it's the holy trifecta. And this is very dangerous times we're living in. When something like that occurs, when you talk about Fauci's like, I am the science, like, bro, wow. Like, do you not hear yourself how authoritarian that sounds?
Yeah, the hubris that you hear from these people.
You. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I personally can't stand them. I know you were talking about Swalwell earlier. Same type of thing. I'm getting tired of you people. I'm getting tired of quote unquote representatives who think that they only represent certain people, right? They have a constituency, and some of them are not vaccinated. And so for them to come out as representatives to basically chastise like he's our fucking daddy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
That's my issue with so many politicians, is that they think that we voted for them to put them in a position where they can talk down to us, right? Meanwhile, they just won a popularity contest. They didn't win like an intelligent contest. No. They didn't earn it.
I like how you said that. I like how you said all you did was you won a popularity contest. That doesn't justify your intelligence level. It just means that you were the most popular. Because, my God, prom king, prom queen could be the stupidest person. They are not the valedictorian. It just means they won the. I mean, sometimes it could be, but you get where I'm going with that. So, but no, that's very well said. I like how you said that. Like, you won a popularity contest. It doesn't make you better.
Right. There's nothing wholesale special about someone like Nancy Pelosi. There really isn't.
Do you know her daughter is now considering running for her seat? I think it is. Or no, yeah, I think I didn't even know Pelosi had a daughter, and I just saw this in the news. Like, oh Jesus, she reproduced. Like, fucking A.
And people don't think we have royalty here.
Again, yes, bro. Like, that's the other thing that blows my mind. Like with Trump, with the Kennedys, with the Clintons. With all of these people, it's like, I'm kind of worried about that. People are talking about like Donald Trump Jr. should run for president. It's like, no, he shouldn't. I was like, I'm kind of against this. Like, this almost dips into despotism to an extent, maybe close. And it's like, to put a cap on this part, term limits have got to come into play. We've got to have term limits. No more career politicians. But the problem with that is, though, when in the history of mankind have you ever seen the powerful cast off their power for the sake of, you know,
it's extremely doubtful. Yeah. Right. It's extremely doubtful that would happen. But I agree that, to me, that is one of the largest hindrances, because they're constantly, even if you're, that's the part that sucks, is even if you're someone who is well-intentioned, who wants to run for Congress or a Senate, and you get in there, you basically have to turn into a telemarketer.
Yes. You got to play the game.
Because you got to play the game, and you got to run. You're constantly running. And you got to go into this office building with a bunch of cubicles and harass lobbyists and donors and say, hey, have you given us $500 this month? Imagine your idea of going to change, society and help build things better is putting on a headset.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, you're 100% right that it just feels like money is at the core of a lot of this. I mean, it's really, I shouldn't say it's the root of all evil. It's the pursuit of things such as similar to that. But yeah, I saw it with Crenshaw. He got elected, and then when like 1 to 2 years, instantly starts campaigning again. And I'm just like, I understand, I get it, but I feel like our elected officials, if they automatically went into this knowing you get one term, that's all you've got. There's no more care or concern about seeking out re-election, donors, anything like that. Now it's focus on your job. And a way, I think, to fix that or to ensure that our local elected representatives truly have our best interests at heart is that your salary should be based upon your district's GDP. And if it in that way, if your district like Pelosi, you wouldn't be getting paid shit. Like these politicians go in there at starters, like starting salaries $174,000 a year, $174,000 a year to work how many days? I was like, this is nuts. This is nuts to me.
Yeah, I think this is my libertarian aspect where I'm very doubtful of the government, especially the federal government, and why I've been more interested in local politics and people focusing on even state politics, right? This is part of the problem with national media because they highlight everything on a federal level. So everybody thinks that every solution comes on a federal level.
Yep.
And
they don't realize the importance of 100%, man.
So if we were to talk about, let's say, Black Americans in a poor neighborhood, them waiting for reparations to come or federal help, like why? Meanwhile, you have corrupt people that you vote in over and over and over and over, and nothing changes, right? Because you're waiting for the big man in the sky to give you something from Washington, D.C., or holding everything in your life on what the president of the United States does, which on the federal level, most of the stuff that they do isn't as impactful as someone locally to you.
Local community involvement is right. That's where you start. Like if you want to fix a poverty level in a certain area, its community starts there. It's not at the federal level. It's at community level. But if that's not being empowered, but instead all we're doing is focusing. The one thing that drives me nuts is when Republicans right now are screaming at our elected representatives like, you're not doing anything. It's like they can't do anything. Like they don't have the majority. What do you want them to do? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene goes out, and this is how stupid some people are. They don't understand how the government works. So they scream at Marjorie Taylor Greene or our politicians like, do something. And she goes, I'm now introducing letters of impeachment. That's not going off of your desk. Like you're going to impeach, but like, no, you don't have the majority. You are wasting time. You're not doing anything. So, and that's what people don't seem to understand. It's like, oh, I love them. It's like, they are literally doing this for optics and you're falling for it versus saying, hey, dipshit, like if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, why are you still doing this equation? What, like, it doesn't make sense why you continuously go down this route and you're wasting our fucking time. And that's what aggravates me about it.
It turns into political clapback.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
And so people like the idea that she's sticking up for them. Meanwhile, nothing changes.
Anything. Yeah, it doesn't
do anything. Yeah. What's the point? So I've almost completely given up on national politics on the federal level. I care more so about things like for example, Youngkin winning in Virginia. I care far more about
big
that.
Big fucking win too, by the way. Flipping Virginia like that, big win.
Huge win. And actually, Youngkin's win to me exemplifies what I talked about earlier about using the human element. He made his campaign run about parents. These are humans. These are people.
Smart. It's smart. Yep.
It's a very smart thing to do. Meanwhile, his opponent made it about Trump and constantly bringing up Trump and Trump, 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 Trump. Meanwhile, dismissing the parents who are legitimately concerned.
Yeah.
I've talked to people who are in Virginia. There are real things that are happening there. Gender ideology being taught, CRT being taught, or aspects of CRT being taught. So for them to gaslight parents and or be okay with was the DOJ labeling them as extremists or
another reason why I'm for the abolition of these three-letter agencies. When you can have a three-letter agency literally investigating parents at a school board meeting saying we don't want this taught to our children, and now the FBI is saying we're investigating for potential domestic terrorism, it needs to be abolished. This is where I think a lot of Republicans don't seem to understand that you can still support the blue line, but more so at a local level where there's more direct oversight, where you don't have the federal government getting involved, any of this stuff. And I think they're finally starting to slowly wake up to this. It's like, you can still support the blue. I do. It's like, but I don't like the ATF. I don't like the IRS. I don't like the FBI. I don't like the CIA. And the other thing is like, we look back at, like, say, for example, the creationism of the FBI and the reason it was created for, and then what it was actually used for. Like, we talked about this in a previous episode, is that basically Hoover went after MLK, trying to paint him as a communist, like utilizing a three-letter agency. So why would Democrats ever support an organization like that, or Republicans for that matter? It's like, and it was proven that, again, the FBI was weaponized to spy on the Trump administration by Obama. It's like, how do you not see this yet, that this should go away?
Yeah, even outside of politics, we know of the plenty of stories where the FBI manufactured a situation, right, just so they can arrest people that didn't have the resources, the time, or the effort, or anything to the money to accomplish it. I remember post 9/11 where they were arresting jihadis, right, in America, and then you found out, oh, it was an FBI agent who just found someone who was angry at America and gave him an opportunity to do something. It was like, that sounds like entrapment. Like that doesn't sound good whatsoever. And the same thing that happened in Michigan with the governor, this so-called kidnapping plot, which is basically planned by the FBI. So
that and the freaking the Patriot Act. Like, I've discussed this as well, to the point where, like, the propaganda was so thick and rich. I was 17. I bought into it, and we still have the Patriot Act. McConnell just signed it back in. I'm like, I'm 37 years old. I was like, how do we still have the Patriot Act? This needs to go away. Like, this is wrong.
Yeah, but they don't care. Once you give them the power to snoop and do all these things, was it FISA? Yeah, to utilize that. Was it Joe Biden constantly trying to unmask who people are? All of these things is extremely shady, and especially when it comes down to hard-nosed politics, and whoever's in power can all of a sudden use one of these three-letter agencies. Yep. I don't like it whatsoever. Yeah. It's extremely dangerous. So I'm not a huge fan when it comes to that. I'm highly skeptical about January 6th and how everything rolled out with that.
Right. I'm telling you that it doesn't make sense. Like, I talked about it before. We've actually had Representative Crenshaw on the show, and I asked him. I was like, he's got a military background. I was like, this doesn't make sense. You're telling me, like, let's repaint this scenario. You're telling me that this is probably one of the most hyped up, if not the most hyped up election in the history of America. You have a 1 million man protest going down, or a rally, not but a mile from where the election results, or the the free electoral college is counting the votes. The electoral votes are being counted. And you're telling me that you, as the CIA, FBI, you weren't monitoring social media and seeing that there was possibly some kind of threats, and you didn't have extra security at the Capitol just in case that 1 million man march made its way around. It's like, you're telling me the most protected people in the world that day weren't. Like, this doesn't make sense. This was entrapment. I really think that this was a staged event, that even the cops were like letting people through. It's like, they knew what they were doing.
Right, and I also think that some of the DC cops were letting them through because one, they didn't really have any backup whatsoever.
Yeah.
They were denied backup, and two, they were like seeing it as, all right, if you guys are gonna go in, you know, I'll tell you this, for insurrectionists, they know how to follow the guided roads.
I know,
Like,
bro. I know. It's the worst insurrectionist possible.
right.
Yeah.
You think if that was like the some jihadi group in Iraq, you think they were being like, oh, look at those paintings. Oh, let's take some pictures.
Exactly.
Hey guys, we're in here. Like, no, they're gonna ransack the place.
Anything for an op-ed, anything for an opinion, or anything for a bit of content to counter, I think, what the BLM did, or more like white liberals did during the BLM riots and shit like that. Because now on social media, all you're seeing is when a liberal doesn't like what a conservative's saying, instantly the January 6th insurrection gets brought up. And it's, again, I call it a fucking riot of stupid people. But they bring up the January 6th. They say, oh, where were you on January 6th? Like, what are you talking about? Like, even a fucking school kid could have planned a better insurrection than that. So
yeah, for an insurrection, the only person that died wasn't armed. You know, I think that says a lot about what it actually was. Was it a bunch of, you know, was it the QAnon shaman? You know, was that,
oh my God,
you know,
QAnon
a bunch
movement.
of,
Don't even get me started on that one.
oh,
That pissed me off about Republicans, how they embrace QAnon, and that's what it led to potentially, or part of it. And, you know, it felt like people's hatred of the left was being weaponized by conservatives, and they used it to their advantage, and it blew up in their face. It's like,
yeah. I heard you talking about that before, and I absolutely agree with you when you said, I think it's a psyop.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because to me, you have, and I know, I've met, because I go into all different circles, I've met people who wholesale believe in it. And I remember, like, after January 6th, they're like, wait till Wednesday. I was like, what's going to happen Wednesday? Wednesday
Biden's going to get arrested and Trump's going to be in the... Shut the fuck up. I know.
Right.
I know.
They're replacing him. I'm telling you, they're replacing him. I was like, what have you seen that Donald Trump is going to do X, Y, Z, right? Literally throughout the whole process, they're saying Trump is going to do this. I was like, Trump has been so mediocre in his reaction to all this stuff. He's basically had press conferences complaining about votes. That's as far as he's ever gone, right? And after January 6th, he said, that's it, it's over. And he walked away. Like, there was no kick out, drag out. Like, so what makes you think?
There was the election fraud stuff, but even then, that would also go exact opposite of what QAnon was pushing. Like, if Trump's sitting there saying, we're going to fight this in the courts, like, QAnon was like, no, the storm's coming. Just wait. It's 4D chess. It's like, no, your goalpost moving is all you're doing at this point. And people didn't want to acknowledge that. So, dude, like I said, I got into so many fucking beefs with people on my own side about the QAnon thing. And, you know, I'm trying not to beat a dead horse here, but I keep wanting to hoist this banner up saying, look, learn from this. Don't do this again. This has bitten us in the ass, and it's been such a bad negative thing for us. It's like, don't fall victim to this type of groupthink simply because you were manipulated by the hatred of the left, and they use that against you. So, and then, you know, I see the same thing today, and it's just, you know, when Lauren, what's her face, the congresswoman, making the Muslim jokes, I'm like, what does this accomplish? What are you trying to do? You're pandering to your own voter base? All you've done is given them more ammunition to paint you as a racist. Well done. Like, it's a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, and also there is something I like to call Blue Anon. I think it's a funny thing. With Blue Anon, who still to this day think that Russia was colluding with Trump, right? And so there is that. No matter how many times that was
even
actually,
though the Steele dossier got proven wrong, and you know, CNN just came out about this a week ago, saying, "Oh, we got that one wrong." It's like, bro, it's too late. And this is what the press does. They will smear the shit out of you for years, and then when eventually it's been proven wrong in a court, then they'll come to a small little retraction somewhere. You barely even see it. And meanwhile, people online still believe that the Steele dossier exists, or that it had truth to it.
And that was actually one of those things. There were small nuggets that happened along the way for me, but that was one of those small nuggets where I remember thinking, like, all right, maybe there is some sort of collusion, because they're talking about this a lot, and, you know, making the jokes and everything. And here comes the day where Robert Mueller is going to show us that there's nothing. Fucking
but
nothing.
The Democrats didn't care. The media didn't care. It was just like, oh, actually, we got him. It's like, no, you don't.
It was even worse because I actually remember Joy Behar saying, well, Robert Mueller's a Republican anyways. Wait a second. You painted this guy as a Boy Scout for 2 fucking years. Like, and then all of a sudden, oh, he doesn't matter. Anyway, so back to Russia.
How quickly they forget. How quickly they move on. It's like, oh, we're not going to talk about that. It's like, no, I want to talk about this. You were wrong. 100%. Right. Oh, that was the biggest. That was the biggest letdown for them. But again, it's just like, oh, we failed. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Because remember, it was Russian collusion, taxes, and everything, and then it came back around to Russian collusion, and then it got proven wrong. It's like, okay, well, Trump's out of office, so it does. It was legitimately just an MSM smear campaign for 4 years, deflect, and then when Trump's out, it doesn't matter.
Right, and that's the crazy thing is, like, I don't have a problem with Trump. I think he's a flawed individual, right? Just like most people. Yeah. But what really got me waking up was learning that there was more information that was being withheld from me as someone who is part of this country and the general public who's consuming media, and them withholding certain details. I actually, there was a book that I read called, I think it was by Kimberly Strasser, was it Resistance at Any Cost or something like that. And it talked about certain things. And I was like, I had never heard about that. How is it possible? I've been like watching this stuff, full coverage all the time, every day. How come I didn't know about these details? And it was the constant lying and the constant showing of the hands. You know, the perfect example is good people on both sides, right? That is one of the biggest red pills you can show someone about the media lying about somebody. And so it's those particular things, they're constant overstepping by the media that actually red pilled a lot of people who were anti-Trump, right? I've met so many people who were like that. 2016, they were down and out about Trump winning because they thought he was this and this and that. Yeah. And then 2020, they voted for him, right? So my wife is a former Democrat too. And throughout our relationship, we kind of red pilled each other. We're just like looking at certain stuff and showing her certain things. And she voted for Trump this last election. So it's one of those things where I think the media showed its hand so hard. They made so much money off of Trump. And they just went full stop that it became so obvious that they were lying at one point. And then the media narrative became extremely flawed. Yeah.
Because, I mean, honestly, if you look into the age of social media with monetized websites and things such as that, more traffic driven to an article on a website generates more ad revenue, things such as that, increases your ratings, your viewership. This was all just a gambit from the get-go, and I think it was just rooted in monetary value. And also, I mean, you can almost talk about, like, I mean, manipulation to such a massive level to where you can almost talk about, like, damn near election manipulation, to where it's so much propaganda founded in lies and conspiracy theorism that eventually, when it does get discovered that it's false, like I said before, it's already too late. It's you know, you can take him to court, you can sue him, but the damage is already permanently done. You know, if you want to kill a man, kill his reputation, he's done. And it feels like that's what the media has become very, very good at, insanely good at, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason why I don't think Trump should run again.
Really?
Not that I personally think his name has been far too polarized, right? He is flawed. There are things that he did that did not help himself, right? Even there were times I'm watching, I was like, dude, why'd you say that?
Exactly.
Dude,
why stop talking? Yeah.
Stop. Just stop right there. Right. And he is not polished in that particular way. Wow. And he allows his words to be used against him, right? Because he goes above and beyond. But that also resonated
with a lot of Americans, though. A lot of Americans love that about him because he basically spoke for the common American man.
He did at times, but then the other times he went too far. Yeah. He made it completely about himself. So he doesn't have the normal regulator that, let's say, even, you know, granted, most politicians are pretty fake, but even like a fake politician will make you feel good inside, right? He doesn't have that regulator to kind of Stop. That's why I personally think that Ron DeSantis is a better option.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think he says a lot of the same things that Trump says, just in a
More
clearer
polished,
way.
Yeah.
Right. And he is less.
Did you see that thing
polarizing.
where Trump went after DeSantis? He said if DeSantis ran against me, he'd lose. Did you see that?
Actually, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he said it like a week or two ago, and I was like, the only reason Trump is saying that is to put thoughts in DeSantis' mind not to run against him in 2024 if he decides to do it. So, but I think if like who would you in your mind, who do you think a perfect 2024 candidate ticket would be for Republicans?
Ticket? Well, I would say to actually
just for president, just for that.
Yeah, to run and win, I think Ron DeSantis as the president.
Think so?
Yeah, I don't really care about vice presidents. Whoever he chooses, I think vice presidents matter very little. As long as it's not Sarah Palin, I think any other
Russia from over here, eh?
Yeah, that's the identity politics part. Where it's like, who's this lady? Where's she come from? I don't know. Find a woman who's a Republican.
That's why Kamala Harris got elected. All she
was
the checkbox for intersectional politics. That's all it was. Because her polling numbers is like 1%. It's like, you picked a one. Like, are you fucking... Bernie would have been a better option for them. But fuck.
He literally said, I'm looking for a woman of color.
Yeah.
Those are his words. And
Democrats
not only that...
Eat it up.
Yeah, and not only that, they love... Kamala Harris is the type of person who will say whatever to get into a position of power. She will do whatever. Yeah. She is the perfect establishment person.
Yeah.
She'll go the party line. She'll go full force. She does not care.
Yeah.
Right. But I will say this: anybody is better than Stacey Abrams. The fake governor of Georgia.
Yeah. Now she claimed election got stolen from her.
Oh well, there you go. But Stacey Abrams, just to get on her for a second. I don't understand the phenomenon. Even when I was a Democrat, I did not understand this infatuation with Stacey Abrams. There is nothing special about her, right? But yet somehow Democrats constantly boast her around like she is the governor of Georgia. It's the weirdest thing.
She's a black woman. They're going to take advantage of that.
Yes, I know that plays into it, but it seemed a little bit more. And I was trying to figure out what more than, because there's a lot of black women who are in politics.
She was the anti-Trump. She was anti-Republican everything. Like, she was so die-hard opposite that people loved that about her. Like, I think she was more of the representation of the combative left, if that makes any sense.
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. I don't know. It just, to me, it felt like a weird thing. Like, I could understand, even if I don't like someone, I could understand why certain people are in love with whoever. Yeah. But that was one person I was like, why Stacey Abrams? What's so special about her?
She's not even attractive.
Yeah, she's not attractive. She's not, like, I think she's a lawyer by trade, but she's not, like, she hasn't said anything that's so wow.
Yeah.
That, like, I don't know. I don't want to stay too long on her because she lost. But
no, she actually came out like 2 weeks ago saying that the election was stolen from her. I was like, wow. So when Democrats lose, the system is rigged. When Republicans lose, no, it's fair and square. So yeah, that was just it was a big ordeal with her. It was like a small little headline. I was like, what? And I read it and I was like, oh my God, here we go. Because that honestly worries me in regards to the election integrity of 2020, that you're going to have it on both sides, but I'm noticing with Republicans, instantaneously, if we take a loss, it's now automatically equates to voter fraud or election tampering. And that's a very scary place to be in, because when you flip Virginia, you come very close to flipping New Jersey, which by and large, coming that close to actually achieving it was also a massive, I don't want to say victory, but it was a telltale of like things are changing. New Jersey damn near flipped.
I'll tell you this, because I'm in New Jersey. I didn't even know who was running for governor under a Republican ticket. That guy didn't campaign whatsoever, and he almost won.
Yeah,
like
they don't think they're gonna win. It's just like Larry Elder in California. It's like, are you really gonna do this? Like, do you really think you're gonna win California? Because it's like, go after the battles that you have a high probability of winning. So I think that's probably why in New Jersey he didn't really push really hard. It's like, you're not gonna flip Jersey, like, but he almost did.
But you know what? I mean, people forget Chris Christie. We've had Republican governors before.
Yeah.
Damn, I forgot the other guy's name. So having a Republican governor in New Jersey is not as far-fetched as people think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in New York, yes.
Yeah.
But in New Jersey, it's happened before. It's happened in my lifetime a couple times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting to see where 2022 is going to lead us in regards to the Senate and Congress, and then 2024. Because I'm not going to lie. It's the first time I've said this out loud. I'm really excited because I feel like the ant farm that we've seen been created by both sides is about to get shaken the fuck up. Because now people, like Republicans, are becoming way more progressive. Democrats are getting way off the charts in regards to liberalism and SJWism, to where a lot of Democrats are leaving. And I honestly feel like we are in a time, like over the next 10 to 15 years, I think America is either going to go the way of like really good or really bad. And like right now, with the first year of Biden's presidency almost coming to an end, we're going down a very bad road, which, according to historical, elections in the past, we naturally will shift. Come midterms, a lot of the seats will go back the opposite direction. But I think this is going to be a massive shift of red, because now Democrats, my God, dude, like if you see in the news, cities all over the country are being looted. Like stores are shutting down. Like this is Biden's presidency.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually think, maybe this is me being optimistic, I think everything when it comes to identity politics, in the extreme leftism aspect that's happening, I think it will all come to a head in 2024. I think what happened in New Jersey and Virginia are just small microcosms of people's frustration with lockdowns, people's frustration with businesses being shut down arbitrarily, fuel prices. You have all these different things, and it's being very clear that like it's not as blurry as it used to be.
Yeah.
Right. It's been very clear where in certain states and certain aspects who is cheering for what.
Yep.
And along with mandates, which in my opinion, I think the mandate issue is far more split than people think. Right. Even people who have gotten the vaccine aren't necessarily for the mandate.
Yep.
And so I don't think that people understand that aspect to it. It's far more nuanced than people think. A lot of people are being forced into that position. My wife has been forced into that position of either get the vaccine or lose your job. And she works in New York City. So that is going to be a big, big issue when it comes to the national election. And it's been very clear who has been for what. And on top of the identity politics part, we're labeling everything and everyone as white supremacy or white supremacists. Yep. It's not working anymore. No, it's not. And
especially when Democrat parents are going to start seeing and waking up. Like, I think you're dead on the money with that. I think when you're a parent and your child is involved in this, suddenly your politics no longer matter. And now it's like, wait, you're telling me that my Democratic representative is saying that I should be forced to vote? No. And I think they're going to lose. That's why Eric Swalwell just tweeted that out yesterday. This moron is like, all he's trying to do is own the justified outrage of conservative parents in Virginia. He's trying to steal that and push it over to Democrats, saying, hey, aren't you tired? Aren't you at your limit with these parents that are basically anti-vax and they want to risk your children? A report just came out today, matter of fact. Let me read this for you. I don't know if a lot of people have seen this. I pulled it up on my Twitter. I can send it over to you. Where is it at? Basically, the most recent report, it's at a 1.6 mortality rate for COVID. This is from Johns Hopkins University. For the 20 countries currently most affected by COVID-19 worldwide, the bars in the charts below. Right now, the highest mortality rate, and this is what doesn't make any sense to me with the Biden administration, the highest mortality rate is Mexico. So then explain to me why you are not doing anything at the southern border, and Mayorkas has already admitted, no vaccinations required. So if this pandemic is so dangerous and the highest mortality rate, deaths from COVID, is our neighbor at the border, you're letting them come in with no vaccinations. And if you truly believe in the vaccination, that makes no sense to me. Makes no sense. Yeah,
I agree. It's talking out of both sides of your mouth when they're trying to satisfy the idea of helping people coming from the southern border, but but meanwhile not forcing them to do something, because these people are victims. They're trying to escape, these bad situations. So I think that's the part that it plays onto. But ultimately, I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to 2024. I'm pleasantly surprised what happened in Virginia and even what happened in New Jersey. If that guy campaigned a little bit, he probably would have won.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, New Jersey is almost red if you were to look at county by county. And that is a positive thing. And I think was it the state Senate, it's majority red. So
even in Florida, they had the highest turnout in the history of Florida for voter registration for Republicans. They've never had, like, Florida is ready. Like, DeSantis isn't going anywhere. Like, they want them some DeSantis. And it's just one of these things to where I love the idea of states' rights, to where they're like, Biden is losing the battle right now, and the press does not want to admit it. His mandates are being pushed back. OSHA is possibly getting expelled from Florida. And I'm like, damn, I love DeSantis. Like, at first, everyone was like pro DeSantis. Like, okay, well, let's give it a second. Let's watch, because I know Crenshaw, people loves him from Crenshaw. Crenshaw come out, and he did some things like, I don't agree with him on this. I think he was the chosen one, and now he's not. I think DeSantis possibly could be the chosen one, because his actions repeatedly have been pro-liberty. Like here with Greg Abbott, he was in favor of raising the smoking age to 21. I'm like, wait, what? No. And he's done a lot of good things, but it's like, bro, too little, too late. You've had how many years, and you're just now getting to this? It's like, come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's why, like you said, DeSantis has been clearly pro-liberty. DeSantis has been all about making sure that people have the right to choose to do certain things, especially when it comes to the pandemic, the vaccinations, and the freedom to move around. And I absolutely love, actually, I have a little bit of I don't want to say relationship, but conversations with Christina Pushaw, his press secretary. And it's so funny how the media is trying everything possible to slander him, and it's not landing. It's not working. They said, what was it? Florida and was it South Dakota were supposed to be the epicenters of COVID. Never was. New York and California were. So it's so funny how they try so hard and they fail so miserably. And it's not working in Florida. Florida is doing everything to the point where people are leaving blue states and going to Florida. People are leaving blue states and going to Texas. And I know people are worried, like, oh, they're going to turn these states blue.
I disagree. Yeah, I think it's going to be more so. Yeah, because when people initially said that, it's like they're leaving their state to go somewhere else and they're voting the same. It's like, people aren't that stupid. There's people running away from California to come to Texas, to come to Florida, because they know what it's like here. Like, because I've talked to people that recently moved to Texas, like, wow, y'all are so free here. Like, there's no masks. You don't have to do anything. You can go buy a fucking gun. It's like, yeah, that's what makes Texas great. That's like, I love it here. It's wonderful. I can't imagine going to places like California and living there. It's like, fuck no. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I've been living in the Northeast for a while. And I actually lived in Nashville for about a year, and I miss it. As soon as I get a chance, I'm out of New Jersey, to be honest with you. My son's going to be graduating from high school soon. And
how old are you? You don't look old enough to have a freaking teenage 17, 18-year-old son.
I'm 37.
So am I. Jesus, okay. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I got started a little bit early.
So did I, but damn. That's awesome for you. Well, hey, brother, I got to wrap this up. Again, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Your book, Black Victim to Black Victor, it is on wrongspeak.net. Correct. Where can they find you on Twitter?
At wrong_speak. I'm on Twitter under that. I'm also on Facebook. And
are you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
I'm primarily on Instagram. Let me follow you on Instagram. I'm not really into Twitter too much because I think Twitter is more of a troll fest. I like Instagram. It seems to have like more engaging conversations and stuff like that. But where are you at on Instagram?
Same handle, at wrong_speak.
Wrong_speak. Definitely blast you on that when I get. Yep, there you go. There's that beautiful face. Gotcha, brother. When I post,
and if
this,
I can,
yeah, go ahead.
If I can plug one more thing,
yeah.
This Saturday I'll be in the Indianapolis area speaking for Turning Points under Turning Points Faith. So if anybody is in the Indianapolis area, will be at Life Church in Noblesville, I believe is the actual town. So 1 p.m. on Saturday, the 4th.
Nice. Good for you, bro. This is Turning Point?
Yeah, Turning Point, yeah.
I'm not a Turning Point fan. I'm just not. But good for you. Good for you. I think they are diehard Trump loyalists, and that concerns me. That concerns me a lot. So, but hey, good for you. Again, it's wrong_speak on Instagram, on Twitter, and then again, your book, Black Victim to Black Victor, wrongspeak.net. You can check them out there. Adam, thank you very much for coming on the show. I definitely want to have you back on, though. I really appreciate you making time out of your busy day to do this. And again, you can check out the tweet. It's on the All American Savage Show on Instagram. The tweet is there. It's about 4 or 5 posts back. It's about 6 different slides. Go read the tweet. Adam nails in very little words what a lot of people are thinking in regards to the the pawnage of black people by the left, and also embraced by the right, by many people out there trying to utilize them as pawns. But you definitely go after it hard after white liberals, and I love the way you said it. Somebody tweeted it to me. I was like, oh, fuck me. It's like, I got to reach out to this guy. Like, this is beautiful. So, but again, thank you for coming on here, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You have a wonderful day, my man.